Today for the panel discussion, we have we welcome the 5 cities, and also we have a distinguished speaker from UCLG and also the Cabinet Office of Japan. So maybe I will introduce the speakers later on. So maybe because time is pressing, so I would like to just jump in the presentation from the cities. So may I ask the speakers from Bonn first? From Bonn, Mrs. Elena Schwarte, Coordinator of Department of International Affairs and Global Sustainability of the Bonn City. So Elena, are you there?
Yes, thanks you, Yatsuka.
Thank you. Yes.
You can hear me well?
Yes, very well.
Okay. Let me share my screen with you. Yes, thank you for giving me the chance to speak here. I will tell you a little bit about the experience from the producing or developing a VLR of Bonn. I just highlight a few basic elements of this voluntary local review. We published it for the first time in October 2020. For this VLR, we could build on our long-standing existing sustainability reporting, and which existed since 2005. And in this report, we linked the indicator-based reporting for the first time with the objectives of the city's 2030 sustainability strategy, which is a political mandate for the city council. This VLR is structured along 6 priority fields of action that the city of Bonn has defined for itself. So it's adapted to the local political framework. And it includes 46 indicators that describe the situation in timelines up to 2005 partly. I just briefly want to highlight a few of the benefits of conducting a VLR. First of all, on the local level, and if I speak about the local level, I'm speaking about the municipal administration itself, as well as the local community and the citizens of Bonn. One of the things that was strongly perceived was that we had a very strong visualization that also guided the interpretation of the figures, and that had a very concise presentation. You can see a few examples here in the subtitle in the pictures. With this VLR, we established a first blueprint to advance our sustainability reporting, and it really developed into being a starting point to bring it to another level, so to say. What we also see on the local level is that sustainability indicators have a growing relevance. So it's not only a per se sustainability reporting, but what we see is that sustainability indicators become relevant, for instance, for political decision papers that are brought into the city council, but also, for instance, we started now for the first time to introduce sustainability indicators also in some of the parts of the local budget planning process for the household that is being adopted just now in the coming weeks. And it also served quite well as a base for new cooperations, for instance, with universities who offered that we develop this further in certain fields of action, and also with companies looking into dashboards and so on. If we look onto the international level, a bit was mentioned already that the VLRs are an important instrument for dialogue. But if we look on the international level, and there I mean looking at other cities and regions, at cooperation with the national government and also the global community, so to say, it helped us a lot to give the city and its SDG activities a much higher visibility. The voluntary local review is also a very effective instrument to demonstrate the contribution of cities to the SDG implementation, both on the national and on the international level. And it was really a good starting point for us for cooperation in international partnerships. Fernando brought a quote from La Paz, which is in Bolivia, which is our partner city, and which also works very strongly on VLR and SDG monitoring, and with which we hope to work closer on this topic in the near future. It also brought us together with other cities, other networks. For instance, I think also that I'm allowed to speak in this forum today is partly due to our participation in the OECD project, a territorial approach to the SDGs, where the city of Kitakyushu was involved and which actually presented their VLR experience, which they had in 2018, which was a strong incentive for us. But it also brought us together and led to increased cooperation with local networks, mentioning IGES, but there's also UNDESA, Local 2030, UCLG, Edgardo is here, UN Habitat, and also with like-minded cities, like what the city of New York has started with the VLR declaration. So the VLR in general serves as an advocacy tool for the case of the cities, and in that regard, it helps us to bring the case of the cities further also on the international level. Maybe we can elaborate on a few points later on, but so far this is what I wanted to present to you just now. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. I can't hear you. I don't know if you can hear me. Yes, well, I'm sorry, I don't have audio. I don't know what's going on, but I'm going to dive right in. Let me share the screen. So I wanted to talk about a little more about how the localization process went in Buenos Aires. We adopted the 2030 agenda in 2016, and since then we plan a strategy on how to localize the SDGs that is based in 3 pillars. First is the adaptation, then we have the awareness raising, and then we have strategic partnerships. So today I'm going to focus on adaptation. That's how the VLR process was created. Since we adopted the agenda, we started working on adapting and linking the local government plan to the SDGs. This stage had many different processes, but what we did was analyze the government plan, and then some SDGs, we had some multi-sectoral process, that's like SDG 11 and SDG 16. And then we call a roundtable for an interministerial process. So our VLR in Buenos Aires, especially the first one, was all about the process and how to link, you know, the local government to the global goals. Sorry, this is the slide. So from our first government plan analysis, we came to the conclusion that Buenos Aires worked for 14 of these 17 SDGs and to 59 goals. But then during the interministerial group and our exchange with the different government departments, we arrived to 61 goals and 16 SDGs. And this process was very enriching because we started working on measuring and following some indicators that weren't being followed, like the gender ones. It wasn't, you know, comprehensive enough. So that was one of the results. Similarly with the climate change agenda. And then we did a selection of the monitoring indicators, and we defined targets for the midterm and long-term run. After this process took approximately 2 years. So after that, we were able to produce our first VLR. Now we're working on our third one, and each one of them has a different, each year we try to add something else to each VLR. So the first one, we only had the reference of New York and the Japanese cities that did the VLR in 2018. So there weren't any guidelines at the moment. So we took the guidelines for national governments, and we based on that. Also, we do our VLRs with the SDGs prioritized by the high-level political forum each year. But in our first one, we also added SDG 5 because we wanted to highlight how the city was working with a comprehensive gender strategy. And we included highlighted indicators and targets. In contrast, our 2020 VLR, there weren't any prioritized goals for that year, but the process, as you can imagine, was a little bit different because in the midst of us producing the VLR, we went into lockdown and the pandemic started. So we adapted it to SDGs 3, 4, 5, 11, 13, and 16, and how Buenos Aires city government responded to the crisis and how it was already planning the day after, what the city would look like after the pandemic. And also from other examples around the world of VLRs and city guidelines that were already available by the time from UCLG and UN Habitat, we decided to include the full list of indicators and targets at the end of the VLR, not just of the ones that of the SDGs prioritized in the VLR. For this year, and also taking into consideration how important cooperation and coordination between local governments and how we can maximize resources by learning from others, we decided to include policy implementation kits of good practices in Buenos Aires so other local governments can implement it. It will be available next week. And we also included the city commitments that are specific, measurable targets and goals that the chief of government commits to doing by a certain time. So, and that whole policy is also explained in the VLR. Of course, we're presenting the SDGs prioritized by the forum. And here in the presentation, we have some links, so I'm sure it will be shared afterwards. And lastly, I wanted to share with you some lessons we've learned, along the way from the VLR. So for us, having a centralized management method was essential to be able to link the SDGs to the government plan, first of all, but also to make a comprehensive analysis of how each SDG cross-cut all the government plan, for example, SDG 16, SDG 13, also having the SDGs, led by a cross-cutting focal point like the General and International Affairs Secretariat was crucial in how we could exchange and cooperate with different government departments. And lastly, as it was already mentioned before, in Buenos Aires, the VLR, it's an ever ongoing process. It's not just a result or a report. It's the time we take every year to reanalyze our government plan, to set our goals and to map where the city wants to go to. So strategic planning alignment is fundamental, and also by linking other development agendas within the city. The gender one, the climate change one, the open government one. So overall, it's an ever reviewing and revising process. So I think that's it for me.
Thank you very much, Mariana, for your very informative presentation on the experience of the VLR in the Buenos Aires. So there is a lot of lessons, you mentioned, but maybe, we will come back to some questions, but yeah, maybe, maybe later on I will ask you the secret of the Buenos Aires to continue VLR annually. So that is kind of, it's difficult.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So now I would like to invite the city of Sao Paulo. So the speaker is Francisco Jose Yumao Moura de Castro. My pronunciation is okay. So the coordinator of international affairs of the Buenos Aires city. So Francisco, floor is yours.
Greetings, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I'd like to firstly thank IGES for this invitation. It means a lot to us. This is a very important theme for our municipal government. So thank you. I'd like to also greet all my colleagues and fellow panelists. I'm going to speak very briefly about our experience in VLR here in São Paulo. Of course, as my colleague said, in the beginning and in the middle of our implementation of VLRs and working through that, we have COVID. So not only maybe we've had some setbacks, but also it's harder to implement the policies with lockdowns. And in São Paulo, we had 2 lockdowns, and we're coming out of it now with vaccination increasing. But COVID-19 caused the world to change its outlook while showing that we live in a globalized community, sharing in initiatives and the consequences of our relationship with the environment. From 2020, there's no way to discuss sustainable development without taking into account the consequences of the health, social, economic, and political crisis generated by the pandemic. This aggravates social inequality and the population in greatest vulnerability, and this we have in Brazil quite a bit, unfortunately, and this increased greatly unemployment and people in vulnerable conditions. Less in São Paulo, but to a great extent in the rest of Brazil. Now more than ever, the 2030 agenda is needed as a desired horizon for national and local governments. In the city of São Paulo, the 2030 agenda has already been part of different frameworks, such as our program of goals, our government program from 2017 to 2020. Our current municipal administration plan is entirely based on the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. So everything we do is based on the Sustainable Development Goals. Every policy from every department has to have that as its baseline, as a benchmark to be approved and to be set forth. In 2017, our multi-annual budgetary plan for 2018 to 2021 was also bound by SDGs. In February 2018, the 2030 agenda was ratified, as I was saying now, as a guideline for São Paulo's public policy. And São Paulo City's program for implementation of the United Nations 2030 agenda for sustainable development was institutionalized. As a result, we had this decree. This was made by decree by our late mayor Bruno Covas. We have now in place since 2018 the Municipal Committee for Sustainable Development, which is deliberative, and so we have tri-weekly, I believe, meetings or twice a month meetings in this, and it's one of the most important institutions within our municipal administration. This is a real step forward in the dialogue around the 2030 agenda, and especially in local level, and consolidates a channel of discussion between civil society organizations, academia, the private sector, public servants, to ensure greater transparency, which is something we really value, and participation in decision-making process. In São Paulo, we have many forums for the civil society to contribute to public policies. Our multi-annual plan and our municipal government plan are always put to the society in public consultations, so that we have feedbacks, and then we edit it before we sort of implement it and set it officially into law, which is what we're doing at the moment. We have the SDG Intersecretarial Working Group as well, that works on building diagnosis for monitoring SDGs in São Paulo, looking to include new indicators in our databases. This process has directly involved more than 50 people and 26 municipal institutions. I'd like to also here reinforce our commitment to the advance of the 2030 agenda at a local level. And now more than ever, just like we've felt the greatest blows of the pandemic in cities, so too the cities carry the greatest tools and the greatest stamina to launch a good response and to launch a good, better recovery for the economy and society. São Paulo joined the Declaration of Voluntary Local Review proposed by New York earlier this year. So always in this sort of main theme of sustainable development. With international support from the Ibero-American Capital Cities Union, whom I thank for this important partnership, we launched São Paulo's localization of sustainable development goals as our first VLR. It was the result of São Paulo's effort to bring the 2030 agenda to local reality, mapping out the institutionalization process, as well as maintaining policies for promoting the policies we had already before we entered into this enterprise, for promoting sustainable development in several fronts. Considering these changes generated by COVID, many municipal policies have been strengthened, and we also created new ones to cope with our current reality. Again, never forsaking the theme of sustainable development. This is the core of our administration as set forth by Mayor Bruno Covas starting from 2018, our late Mayor Bruno Covas, and we strive to continuously honor his vision and his legacy in this front. Our first VLR count on the main initiatives taken by the city of São Paulo to face COVID-19 pandemic was also put. And as a continuation of this process and long-term strategy based on the diagnosis already elaborated by our intersecretarial working group, so practically every department in our municipal administration took part in this process. Our municipal committee for SDG adapted the SDGs to our municipal reality and the COVID-19 reality. As I said, this is now in a consultation phase with the population. I had in my next point, it's weekly discussions, bi-weekly discussions. So the committee meets bi-weekly, and we have 7 thematic chambers: social, environmental, institutional, strengthening, health and well-being, economic, and urban and educational. So in this, we've got government members, civil servants, and also members of society. They take an active role in our administration, which also is important for transparency in government, which we, again, have as a priority. This document intends to guide the planning, budgeting, and the management of municipal instruments until 2030, from now until 2030, bringing sustainable development as a reference for São Paulo's municipal policies and ensuring the continuation of the localization of the 2030 agenda in coming years. Returning to business as usual is no longer possible, and it's necessary for us to adapt to this post-COVID crisis and reality. What is important, and I think we'll get into this a bit later, is that São Paulo, the city of São Paulo, diverges completely in this front from our federal government, which unfortunately has a vision that is, as I'm sure most of you know, well, not very sustainable, let's say. And I think that's it. I just want to thank you again for this and to reiterate our firm commitment to SDGs, to the VLRs, and continuing working with our fellow cities and friends from IGES. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Francisco, and for your presentations. And then, we will come back some governance issues later on to you. Okay, so next, I would like to ask the Jun Jin Woo from the Taoyuan City, Chairperson of the Research and Evaluation Commission. The floor is yours.
Hello, good evening. am pleased to represent Taoyuan Municipality to tell more about our VLR report. First of all, I would like to give a rough idea about our VLR report. It was actually composed of 17 indicators, just as other representative has mentioned. Every city has their specific focus. So for us, in short, we will focus on 3 dimensions. That is environment, society, and also society. And I would like to tell a little bit about our characteristic. It is like in Taoyuan City, we have a diverse ethnic group. We have, for instance, like the majority is the Fujian, but we also have Hakka and indigenous people and also some migrant workers. There are 6 major municipalities in Taiwan, and Taoyuan, it is the youngest city. So the average age of our resident is 39 point, is around 39 years old. And this is also the city with the fastest population growth. Taoyuan, although as a hub for industry, but we also have the business and service sector, and we also has the agricultural sector. As the city grows, we also face some problem. For instance, we face insufficient public facility, and we also see a getting higher cost of living. And because we have a diversity ethnic group, so we also put the focuses on the cultural preservation, and we also focus on gender equality. Just to show some latest news about Taiwan, we have a very serious drought several months ago. Right away, although there are some rain already, but we can sure that we already face an uneven rainfall. So that means it is very needed for us to propose a sustainable goal. And now on the slide, you can see there are several topics we would like to put an emphasis on. Not just focuses on the specific theme in Taoyuan, we also participate a lot of international forum and sharing experience occasions. And besides, we also receive some prize for our good performance. For instance, in 2019, we won the Most Intelligent Community of the Year. I would like to talk a short history about our voluntary local review. First of all, Taoyuan is the first city to launch the VLR report, and it can date back to 2018 when our mayor visiting New York City. That is the first one of the 4th city to publish the VLR. So after the visit, as the mayor come back to Taoyuan, and a month later, we officially announced the Taoyuan City's Vulnerable Local Review. Last year, in September, we published and launched our VLR at the Asia Pacific Social Innovation Summit. Similar to the city representative just mentioned, our mayor also care the sustainability development goal. So he held several meetings with other leaders. And we also compile and that to 59 indicators. So what is the vision of Taoyuan? I would say we would like to build a friendly and sharing, sustainable, and low-cost city. And last, I would like to talk you about some specific cases what we have done. For instance, Taoyuan is the youngest city, so we put some we already have 3 startup hub specifically for youth. And this project is in line with the goal number 8 and also the goal number 9 and also goal 11. Taoyuan is quite special because we are close to the ocean and there are mountains in this city. So we are also carry and also put emphasis to promote environmental education. We hope our citizens can understand the very close link between environment and society. Besides, Taoyuan is also a city with many beautiful historic buildings. So we also try to revitalize this good history. And it is aligned to 3 sustainability goals, which is also the number 4, number 8, and also number 11. So, in conclusion, we would like to use the VLR report, try to review our policy, and also to share Taoyuan's experience with the world. Last but not least, we really hope by doing the VLR report, we can deepen our citizens' awareness and let them know sustainability is close to their daily life. I sincerely invite all of you to visit Taoyuan as the pandemic is lessened. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chung Ting, and for your presentation. Very nice, beautiful Taoyuan. So we'd like to visit your city after the pandemic is gone. And then, okay, so the lastly, we have a video message from the Los Angeles friends. So the here, yes, could you show the video from Los Angeles?
Thank you to IGES for inviting Los Angeles to this webinar. And I want to say IGES was one of the early and first champions of local leadership on the SDGs and really helped us get the word out about Los Angeles's efforts way back in 2019. So a big thank you to everyone at IGES. My name is Erin Bromagem, and I am the Director of Olympic and Paralympic Development, as well as the Conrad and Hilton Foundation Fellow on the Sustainable Development Goals in the City of Los Angeles. And I'm joined by my colleague, Angela.
Hi everyone, I'm Angela Kim. I'm the SDG Program and Data Manager here at the City of LA.
And together we work on Mayor Garcetti's International Affairs team under the leadership of our Deputy Mayor, Ambassador Nina Hachigian. And our Mayor, Eric Garcetti, committed the City of Los Angeles to adopt the SDGs in late 2017. And our work really started in early 2018 with support from the Conrad and Hilton Foundation and from the Mayor's Fund for Los Angeles. So when we have the opportunity to share what Los Angeles is doing to realize the SDGs, we start by acknowledging that the goals are global, but ownership is fundamentally local. You can't end poverty or hunger or inequality without starting at home. You can't really divorce progress from the place in which you're trying to see the effects or trying to exert change. But the beauty of being part of a shared global development agenda means that what we do in Los Angeles to realize health and well-being and education and equality can be expressed with the common language of the goals. We can share with one another the tools and the ideas that are working. And so that has been our approach in LA. Focus first on how the SDGs add value for Angelenos, and then figure out how we can share that value with anyone, anywhere who wants to be a part of the 2030 agenda. And that's really how we came to our first voluntary local review back in 2019. And I'm so excited to see how the movement has grown over the years since that first report. So as more cities, local and regional governments come together to share how their progress is changing the game and realizing the goals, we see their innovations and we learn from one another and we get motivated all over again. So in 2019, we launched not just our VLR, but also our open SDG data reporting platform. And we saw these as two sides of the same story, one qualitative and one quantitative. But while the VLR is really a point in time assessment, our data reporting has never stopped. It's continuous.
And in 2019, LA was the first city to report data on the SDGs at the indicator level using an open source platform called Open SDG. We're currently reporting on 159 indicators on the platform, have also developed a robust localization methodology focused on leaving no one behind and identifying root causes instead of just reporting on outcome statistics. And our data platform is a modification of OpenSDG, which was developed by the UK and US national governments in partnership with the Center for Open Data Enterprise, originally for national level reporting. So all of our modifications to make this platform work at the local level are captured in a public wiki, and the code is available for any city or organization in the world who wants to fork this code and develop their own instance of the platform so they can start also reporting on the indicator level. And in 2020, we launched another platform called LA Activities Index, the SDG Activities Index, to help us capture the breadth of work being carried out by our local communities on the SDGs. Because while the data platform helps us measure progress on the goals, it doesn't tell us all the rich activity and the work that are being carried out day to day by community organizations in LA. So this activities index is a living encyclopedia of projects and organizations in the public and private sector, as well as philanthropy, community-based organizations, and academia, all doing work to make progress on the goals. And this index currently has over 130 activities indexed by SDG, sector, and theme. This platform, like our data reporting platform, is also developed using open source technology, so it's available for any city in the world who also wants to develop their own instance of this and start reporting on their activity. And all of this work is made possible by deep partnerships that we have with academic institutions in LA, so universities, colleges, and their faculty and students that are here in Los Angeles. Since early 2018, when we first partnered with Occidental College, we have worked with more than 160 students that have helped us translate these goals into the work of LA and into projects that help us solve city problems every day. And we now work with 5 universities, including Oxy and the Thunderbird School of Global Management at Arizona State University, the University of Southern California, the University of California, Los Angeles, the Claremont colleges, namely Pomona and Pitzer, and in pairing student teams with city clients on projects that range from gender equity indicators to biodiversity and street assets. From indoor air quality solutions and a just transition away from fossil fuels to research on restorative justice, truth-telling, and racial equity. So these student projects touch upon all the work that the city does and crosses through all 17 SDGs.
And we really believe that this is the real work of the SDGs. And this is where, as you know, countries take on voluntary national reviews, we hope that they'll consider centering their reporting in the place-based leadership that we see happening through the voluntary local reviews, but also through deep partnerships for the goals that are rooted in the actual work of communities and community development. So as we approached 2021 and started thinking about our second voluntary local review, we knew we wanted to do something slightly different. So our voluntary local review this year will tell that story of the SDGs in action. So how does this global vision for the world we want translates into the work we do in cities? And how can a VLR serve as a process and a platform and a product that really invites people in our communities and in our global community into this work in Los Angeles? So how can we use the voluntary local review as a launching pad that helps to grow this beyond LA, but also grow LA's ties with others around the world who are committed to this future that we want, and to leave no one behind in the process? So please do visit us at sdg.lamayor.org. That's sdg.lamayor.org, as well as sdgdata.lamayor.org to learn more and to see the story of our 2021 voluntary local review later this July. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So thank you very much, Ellen and Jara. And then, please visit to the, Los Angeles sites for more information. So they are very interesting kind of the activities of the VLR's localization processes, inviting the local stakeholders, also indicator development. So now, thank you very much for waiting for a long time. Eduardo, it's your time. So I would like to, the next speaker is the Mr. Eduardo Brisky from UCLG. And then I would like to somehow, you're somehow overall kind of, somehow the trends of the VLRs and then VSRs and then if possible, the audience audience is asking what is the most difference, the result of the VLR and the third-party evaluations. If you address a little bit, about this questions. Yes, Eduardo, floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I will try to share the screen and to be as short as possible because I think we are a little delayed. And overall, because some of what I was planning to say was already mentioned in different ways by different partners. I don't know if you see my screen well. Okay. Then first of all, let me come back to the maps that many of you have shared before, only to update you that yes, we have there is a snowball effect of VLRs. If we talk about around 40, 45 VLRs 1 year and a little more ago, now we are reaching more than 100. If we try to be precisely 180 VLRs that we have collected or received notifications that are going to be launched in the coming days, and more than 50 more are expected in the coming few months. Then what is remarkable, what we need to stress is that we have here all kinds of local governments, big regions like Yucatan or Hawaii, and big global cities like Buenos Aires, like Guangzhou, or and intermediate and little cities, and even some more rural areas that are reporting. So the methodology of VLRs. Then we see that we have a growing community of VLRs that are more and more relevant in the SDG implementation framework to overcome the mismatch between the official reporting, the official indicators, and the local data. As we say, many of the VLRs are developing their own methodologies to develop indicators and data disaggregation. Then I want to highlight a new generation of bottom-up reporting, of local governance reporting that Fernando mentioned it, but we will to stress the concept of voluntary subnational review. Why we are not talking local by subnational? Because here we have reports that are being developed by local government associations. For the moment, last year it was 6. This year we have 8 national local government associations that are developing a wider view of what is going on at country level, including the report, not only one city or 2 cities, but in general, the vision of what's going on at the subnational level in all the country, or at least a sample of local government from different kinds in the country. And this is really strengthening the voice of local governments and their national association in the reporting process. We can see it, and I come back to see, in the way that voluntary national reviews are taking care, are quoting, or even including in the voluntary national reviews the subnational reports. And they bring to us not only the situation of a few cities, not only but all the debate, what is the enabling institutional environment, how the country is evolving to facilitate or to make it difficult for local governments to localize the SDGs. What are the data trends for all the country? How the different means of implementation that the national government or different stakeholders are trying to bring to help local governments in these localizing efforts. And this year, as I mentioned, we have 8 countries. We have, first of all, Cape Verde, we have Indonesia, Mexico, Norway, Sweden, Tunis, Zimbabwe, and Germany. That you see on the down of the screen, the 5 that already been released, and 3 more are going to be released next week. And then I go to the last slide, trying to take some lesson or some ideas on what is happening from our point of view as local governments organization to reporting to the UN. Particularly, as you know, we prepare every year a report to the UN that's called Toward the Localization of the SDGs. I mentioned there's no binding effect. You have on the right the trends of these local governance and overall how the different regions of the world are contributing to these voluntary local reviews. I mentioned that national governments are increasingly aware of the relevance of such initiatives. In more than 20 countries like Finland, Japan, Kenya, Mexico, local governments are quoting on including in their reports this information about voluntary as well as voluntary subnational reports. Then this is revamping in some way, changing the way that local governments are developing the dialogue between the local level, the national government, and even with international institutions, as UN Habitat mentioned, but also UNESCO, in all the UN Regional Commission, UNESCO PNASHA by UNECA in Africa, ECLAC in Latin America, all these regional UN commissions are making space or to develop, to discuss on the VLRs in the regional forums, and many of them are even supporting cities in development of these voluntary local reviews. Then, for our point of view, these local reports are a lever to promote a more comprehensive world government approach in the monitoring and reporting of the SDGs. For an example, agreements between ministries and local governments in the case of Norway, in the case of Spain, in the case of Mexico, and local governments in some countries are invited to be part of the official delegation of the UN. This is an important change of game. And then finally, to underline our role in all this process, both VLR and VSR are underlying the role of cities network to create a communities of practice and enhance peer-to-peer exchange. As it was stressed by Fernando, in the idea to have two peer-to-peer review. And in some regions, this is already taking place. Thank you very much. I try to be as short as possible.
Thank you very much, Eduardo, for your cooperation to make your presentation very short. You have a lot of things to want to say, but thank you very much for your cooperation. So the because the our time is very limited, so I would like to go to the next presentations on the very important issue of the VLR and VNR linkage. And then in addition to that, I would like to invite Mr. Jun Miyasato from the Cabinet Office. He is the Assistant Director of the Council Bureau for the Promotion of Local Innovation. So I would like to ask him to introduce some kind of the national government's efforts to support local governments to do the somehow to do a localization SDG and also the monitoring. So Miyasato-san, floor is yours.
ありがとうございます。内閣府地方創生推進事務局参事官補佐の宮里でございます。本日はこのような機会を与えていただきまして、IGES に感謝いたしております。国と自治体の連携ということでですね、私の方では今、内閣府が取り組んでおります SDGs 未来都市というものを紹介させていただきます。これはですね、地方自治体が SDGs を取り組むことにより、地方創生を行っていくと、このようなものでございます。2018年から行っている制度でございまして、簡単に申し上げますと、SDGs 達成に向けて、経済、社会、環境、この3つの側面を統合した優れた取り組み、これを提案する自治体を SDGs 未来都市として選定しているものでございます。さらにですね、その中でも特に先導的な自治体の取り組みを自治体 SDGs モデル事業としておりまして、このモデル事業には政府から補助金を付与しております。2021年度までにですね、4年間、4回の選考を行い、毎年30都市ほどを選んでおります。合計で現在124都市を選定しております。さらに毎年10事業をですね、先ほどの補助金があります自治体 SDGs モデル事業と選定しておりますので、こちらは現在40事業という形になっております。で、取り組みとしてですね、ただ単に選定するだけではなく、進捗管理、そのようなものもですね、我々の方で協力させていただいているところでございます。選定された都市におきましては、内閣府および有識者の大学の先生方、もしくはですね、日本の各省庁、これは自治体 SDGs 関係省庁タスクフォースと申しておりますが、そのようなところからですね、各都市に助言をさせていただく。さらにですね、目標に向けた重要業績評価指標、これは KPI と呼んでおりますが、このようなものを掲げていただいた計画を策定していただくということでございます。で、KPI の設定においては、政府が公表している地方創生 SDGs ローカル指標リストの活用を推奨しております。で、これらによりですね、毎年取り組みの進捗を報告していただき、有識者等でフォローアップ、進捗管理を行って、PD サイクルを回していく、そのようなものでございます。で、これによりですね、地方創生に向けた素晴らしいモデル事業を、政府のホームページ等で情報発信し、各地方自治体への、普及発展を図ることでですね、SDGs のローカリゼーションを後押ししている、そのようなものでございます。これにより SDGs に向けた各都市のいい取り組み、好事例をどんどん共有、普及させていただいているというこのようなものでございます。簡単ですが、私の方からの紹介は以上でございます。
Thank you very much. Your kind of good, very useful inputs from Japan, Mr. Miyasato. And then I think the SDG, the Future City program, fostering the frontrunner cities, and also the Japan, more and more Japanese local governments is jumping into the SDG practices. So I think the it works very well, and also the maybe it's very yeah, would like to emphasize the monitoring evaluation is already incorporated in the kind of the the program. So that is very good for the local government to do that. So thank you very much, Miyasato-san. And then, yeah, I'm sure, we have only 5 minutes left, but, we have maybe a lot of questions is awaiting for us. So let me kind of, yeah, excuse us to, extend the 5-6 minutes, of this webinar. So maybe, this is kind of last chance for us to answer a question to the cities and then the distinguished speakers. So yeah, for the distinguished speakers, I will selected some questions from floors, and then also the ourselves. So could you answer the questions in 1 or 2 minutes each? So first, I would like to ask the Belena from Bonn and about the questions. So the Bonn is the setting some indicators for monitoring SDGs. So the setting on your own indicators. So I think that this is very useful the experiences. But and then some relating this, there is a questions of the how you deal with somehow time series the data after the COVID things, COVID-19. So could you elaborate a little bit about indicator at the Bonn and also the question?
Yes, thank you, KATAOKA. I think, of course, COVID will have a tremendous impact, particularly on time series, and you will, a lot of your usual developments that maybe were constantly in one direction are now completely will have a significant up or down in your data. But I think in that context, it's very important to do an interpretation of the data, because I think very often just having a figure doesn't help you much. What you have to look into is really putting it into a context. What is the context in your local situation? And also have an expert doing an interpretation of the figure to explain what this means for a city. For instance, if or the income of a city, like it is in Germany, the income of the cities goes down substantially. This is because the local tax income has completely vanished during COVID. So I think you have to put things into perspective so that people can understand what does this figure mean, how would it maybe pick up again, and so on. So I think context and interpretation is key in that situation.
Important one for the context, reading the context. So this is very important, and also the some experts' view on to analyze or explain the situation. That's a very important point. So thank you very much, Elena. And the next, I would like to ask the Mariana from Buenos Aires. So the question I asked you in the end of your presentation. So it's kind of fascinating to the Buenos Aires annually publish the VLRs and then have the different contents to some extent. So could you tell your secret, how you can manage it, financially and the human resources?
Well, I think it ties with that Buenos Aires has a long-standing tradition of accountability, of good governance, and open public access to information, right? So, and that the VLR, besides being a process within the government, is also a process for outside the government. In terms of human resources, it's not a big team, eh? It's just me and one other colleague. We do the VLR, and then for the report, of course, we have extra people reading it and rereading it. But then we also have a huge support from the stats department of Buenos Aires. Last year we reported 218 indicators, and this year we'll have a couple more. and also the Secretariat of Planification, so of planning. So it's not a big team within the city, but we try to maximize our opportunities to collaborate with other government departments. And I think it also goes the same way with other cities around the world, and how we can learn from them, and how being a small team with, you know, limited resources, we can do something like this every year. It's not easy, but you know, we can do it.
Okay, thank you very much. You know, it's kind of fascinating to hear that, you know, very small group is doing a big jobs. So yeah, congratulations on your presence. So the next, you know, I would like to ask Francisco about the, you know, some stakeholder engagement. So you mentioned lots of kind of the seminars, and somehow, you know, invite a lot of stakeholders. So could you a little bit elaborate of the stakeholder engagement, and then the audience, they ask the, you know, how, you know, the how to reflect the voices from the marginal people, or, you know, so the could you elaborate a little bit more on the things?
Thank you again. As I said, I think briefly during our initial remarks, we count a lot on the society, especially because we want to know what our vulnerable citizens have to say. So we have these public consultations in various sub-prefectures. São Paulo is very big. We have, let's say, deputy mayors for each small city, let's say. For example, our largest sub-prefecture with the largest territory in the south is called Parelheiros, and it's the poorest region in São Paulo. We have our administration, Mayor Bruno Covas' administration, and us at the International Affairs Department, we have a very large focus to bring their view to our policies as the most vulnerable citizens in our city. We institutionalize this by public consultations like forums. So our administrators go, and we have plenary sessions, long-lasting, and that's how we localize even further. Not as São Paulo as a whole thing, but we focus specifically on sub-prefectures, so that we have the outlook of the people from every sort of walk of life in São Paulo. I would just like to, I'm not sure if this is what you asked also, but I'd like to say something about governance, that we have very good collaboration with our regional government, the state of São Paulo, but practically zero on this front with the federal government. As I said briefly, our federal government, I don't know if you know, but if you follow Brazilian politics a bit, and we are completely different. And that's what I want to tell you all, which is a very important message for us all, because our municipal administration, as I said, is completely devoted to sustainable development, to the sustainable development goals. And we embarked in this VLR train very willingly, and we're very interested in all of your inputs. But just to say that, and that's how we localize the SDGs in sub-levels of the city, and then we institutionalize it in a robust plan. Sorry if that took a little bit too long.
Thank you very much for sharing your insights. You know, the in addition to the stakeholder engagement, some the collaboration with the intergovernmental or in some vertical kind of partnership with the government is a kind of the key to do the good VLRs. Thank you very much. So next, I'd like to ask Eduardo about the question. So the audience asked, since VLR has being done by ownership by each city, so maybe there is a kind of disparity or inequality of the capacity of a city. So how do you collect such kind of disparity and inequality among the capacity of each city? It's a different question. Could you elaborate?
This is one. This is one of the questions that was already addressed in our first VLR's guideline. As you know, we published it last year with in cooperation with UN Habitat. That means you have strong cities with strong capacities, as is the case for Buenos Aires, Sao Paulo, Barcelona, which can develop a strong support, for example, on looking of indicators, etc. But you have small cities like little towns, for example, Chimbote in Peru, or that have very limited support. And in general, or for example, some cities in Africa. And they are most of the time supported by different agencies, national or international, particularly international. In Africa is UNECA, that the UN Commission for Economic Development of Africa, that is supporting the majority of the VLRs that have been developing in Africa, except in Kenya. In Kenya is the national government that is supporting the different counties to develop the VLRs, and they have placed a SDG focused person at each county level. In different cities in Europe, even if you have much more resources and capacities, some cities have, for example, in the case of Germany itself, Deutsche Städtetag, the German association, mentioned that many little and small cities, or the Norwegian or the Sweden, that many little and small cities have difficulties to complete all the VLR's process, collection of data, etc. This is why this is an important common undertaking between the national government, the intermediate governments, regions where they exist, and local governments. We need a collaborative approach to do this work. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your insights. A lot of efforts it's putting, to collecting the disparity and support the local governments to do the SDG localization and VLRs. Thank you very much for your insights. So now I would like to ask Ms. Chun Ting Wu about Taoyuan City, about how you can how you incorporate VR results into the next policy planning. This is a kind of a question from audience. Could you briefly elaborate this point?
So I think the key is the mayor. If the mayor is eager and would like to do something, and they will hold a lot of meetings, and they can sort of to review the existing policy. What is the shared value between the policy and also the SDG goal? For instance, the SDG goal number 2, it is about to end the anger. We already have a policy. It is trying to have a circular system and try to sharing food with the people in need. And it is like kind of so-called food bank. Besides, I would like to focus this on the goal number 4. It is about the education. As I had mentioned, Taoyuan, it is a city with a lot of different group of people, and some people, they live in remote mountain. So you can see clear digital differences between the city and also in the remote countryside. So we also see the difficult situation as the COVID-19 outbreak, because a lot of students, they cannot go to the school. So we try to have some solution to give more resources to the people living in the remote area. Yeah, this is what I would like to share with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the insight. Thank you very much. It's very informative. Thank you. So the yeah, time is coming. So the lastly, I would like to ask Miyazato for your somehow how you feel to hear this, the cities outside of Japan, and then some or some the your kind of the how you would like to promote the SDG localization.
ありがとうございます。大変たくさんのですね、素晴らしい、都市の事例を聞かせていただきまして、大変勉強になりました。ありがとうございます。で、我々もですね、先ほど、SDGs 未来都市というのを選定して展開しているわけですけれども、2024年に210都市を目指しているんですが、日本の自治体は全部で1788都市ございます。ということはですね、SDGs 未来都市をもってですね、すべて SDGs をもって地方創生をできるというわけではないということでございます。我々が目指しているのはですね、先ほど各都市からいろいろ教えていただいた好事例ですね。これを日本の中での好事例を見つけて、広げていきたいというふうに思っております。さらにですね、我々の日本の中でも都市というものではなく、町や村という非常に小さな自治体もございまして、SDGs をですね、すべての地方創生としてですね、広げていくには、このような小さな町や村をですね、いかに SDGs に取り組んでいただくということを課題にしております。それに向けてですね、今いろいろな知恵を絞っているというところでございますが、今日お聞かせいただいた各都市のですね、素晴らしい事例なども参考にしながら、我々日本政府もですね、SDGs を地方に向けて、普及させていただくという取り組みを進めていきたいと思います。ありがとうございました。
Thank you very much, Miyasato-san. It's very challenging to involve the small towns and then cities into the VLR movement, also the SDG localization movement. So it's challenging for the all over the world. So maybe we continue to continue to exchange the experiences among cities. So I have a lot of questions, and also the audience give a lot of questions. So, but the time is coming. I'm sorry about the time management, and maybe we will have maybe another opportunity to deepen somehow understanding. Our understanding on how VLRs has been promoted in each city. So maybe I just will have another opportunity for the more interactive discussions. So please yeah. So I'm thank you. So thank you very much. So I think from this today's discussion, so we understand that there is a various ways of doing VLRs. But the VLRs bring different benefits to the cities to improve the governance or kind of stakeholder engagement and or some other indicator development. So I think the VLR is a very great tool to promote the localization of the SDGs. So maybe yes, and maybe I just is continue to continue to promote the exchange of discussion among cities. So maybe the next time we will have a more good discussions. And thank you very much for the Eduardo from UCLG to collaborating with us as always. And then also we understand thank you for the National Government of Japan, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and also the Cabinet Office, and also the Habitat at kindly the delivered opening remarks. So yeah, thank you very much. So this is the end of the webinar. So thank you very much. So see you again in the next webinar. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.